Jarman. What I wanted to share with you is Community R4C and what we're doing as part of an initiative to establish and support the development of a circular economy within Gloucestershire. What we're doing is really genuinely remarkable. I think it's very special. It's a groundbreaking model, it's a new model, and it's something that I think we will be proud of in Gloucestershire, not just in terms of what it does for us here, but also in terms of it being an example, an exemplar that we hope other communities will share from. Looking at this lecture theatre, it's brought to mind 30 years ago, I was sat where you are in a similar lecture theatre whilst I was doing my engineering studies. And I can remember I was sitting down there and just thinking about that a lot longer ago than Sue was studying here. I was listening to a lecture on thermodynamics, and I can tell you, fluid dynamics in fact, obviously didn't have that much of an impact on me. I can tell you it was one of the most incomprehensible lectures I had. I hope that I make a little bit more sense. Very quickly, a bit of background. So how is it that I became a co-founder of Community R4C? What are my credentials? So I started off as a chartered engineer, worked for Renishaw, a very significant local engineering business, and then was in leadership, management, director type positions of high growth engineering businesses, raising fundings, taking them to exit. I was then recruited into venture capital. Yeah, boo hiss, quite right. It wasn't all bad. So we were focusing funding and support for early stage, high growth businesses. So that's what I understand. I understand how to create successful new ventures, battling against the obstacles. It's always challenging starting something new, which is against the current model. Over the last 10 years, I've been focused on sustainable business. That is, businesses that are concerned not just about their economic leg, but also about their environmental and social impact. I've been particularly involved in renewables and waste-to-resource businesses. And I share very much Jonathan's comments about, we shouldn't be thinking about waste, we should be thinking about resource. But most people talk waste. So I've got it a couple of times in my slide. I noticed slides going forward. I noticed. Community R4C, the why, what, how. Why are we doing this? What are we doing? How far have we got? Firstly, let's look at the why. I think it was very clear in Mike's talk. Simon, I think, also drew on this. And in fact, on Mike's talk, there was a signpost at the bottom of the last slide. We face a fork in the road, fundamentally between continuing to travel down a linear economy and choosing instead to treasure our resources, protect and recycle them. I came across a cartoon from a local artist, which I want to share with you, which resonated with me. It is a lovely cartoon. Now, for sure, the alternative is distracting, it's challenging. Any community group, anybody that tries to find an alternative way forward is challenged. However, I don't think any of us, Jonathan used the words himself, though I don't think any of us think it is at all sensible to continue down a route where we treat the world's planet's finance resources as something that we can use once, throw away and incinerate. Building a facility that lasts for 30 years, 2050 for Pete's sake, is madness. I don't need to cover this, Mike has done it brilliantly. But I've borrowed his slides. I just want to focus a little bit. This is on the why. Why are we doing this? So what happens at that point where you've got more capacity across the country, across Europe, than you have waste? Well, at that point, all of a sudden, those facilities, those expensive facilities that you built, have to compete for waste. So gate fees come down. Now, I wouldn't want to be a funder or a backer or a BASA or Balfour Beatty funding one of these operations when gate fees fall through the floor. So one hopes that those organisations, whoever it is that's going to buy a BASA are up for sale. Green Investment Bank, they're up for sale. I wouldn't want to be stepping into their shoes of investment into this facility when, going forward, they will not be able to fill the commercial and industrial waste capacity at the price that they thought they were going to be able to fill it at. The second thing that happens, and this is really quite devastating, the sort of initiatives that Simon and those groups are doing are fantastic in terms of driving up recycling, treating waste as a resource. As soon as you have a situation where you've got too much capacity, it drags in waste. That's what it has to do. And it drags in particularly plastic waste. It needs that to fuel the incinerator. So what we have, as soon as we hit that point, only a few years down the line, is real incentives not to move down a circular economy. So surely, self-evident, it is crazy to build an incinerator with a 30-year lifetime, and which won't even be operational for 3 years. Another quick way of looking at this. Now, my picture on the waste hierarchy is not as complete as Eunomia's here. Absolutely at the top here, design out the need for waste in the first place. In fact, let's not treat it as waste. But we all know we're trying to move up Yeah. So what we're trying to do is move up the waste hierarchy here. This is basically don't create the waste in the first place. Now, down at the bottom is disposal, landfill. That threshold between disposal and energy recovery is 20%. About 20%, it might be slightly higher. Our incinerator is going to operate at just above that threshold. So we lock ourselves in for at least 30 years, right at the very bottom of here. Yet all the legislation, all the initiatives, European, all of our concerns about the planet say, of course, what we should be doing is driving up here. Let's look at that from an investment perspective. You would think that since what we're trying to do is get to the top of this hierarchy, that people would be contracting, investment would flow into the top of the hierarchy. In fact, exactly the opposite happens. Talk to Mike Brown about it. They've done some excellent work on this. Why is it that that happens? Why? Well, can I give you a couple of suggestions? The first is most of waste treatment capacity is contracted by local authorities. Local authorities do this through their waste disposal authority. It's even called a waste disposal authority. That's what its job is. That's how they think. They contract, all of their relationships are with landfill operations, big operators that used to run landfill and now run other facilities. So they start with thinking that's right at the bottom of this hierarchy. Of course, when you contract with those guys, they're only very, very, very happy to say to you, well, you're going to have to provide us with a 30-year contract. It's going to have to be multiplied by the current landfill tax, £86 a tonne, plus the cost of landfill. So you multiply your waste by that huge cost of sending it to landfill, make it 30 years, and you're going to spend a huge amount of money. And you know what? To spend a huge amount of money, I've got to build very big infrastructure. So, yeah. Sorry, it's madness. So what do we do about this? It is one option, and a lot of people have said to me, and there's people in the audience here that, like me, have been arguing the case for a long time, protesting about the build of an incinerator here, that maybe we just throw up our hands and say, well, gosh, it's going to happen anyway. It's done. We can protest. There's been a lot of protesting. People have done, there's people here who have done a fantastic job at protesting against the build of the incinerator. They won the argument. They absolutely won the argument. The planning committee unanimously rejected it. Sadly, that's not what's going to happen because in practice, it's now consented and there's a contract in place. So, what we've done as a community group is we've taken to heart the words of Buckminster Fuller. These are very significant. Great Buckminster Fuller. Look him up if you don't know him. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So that's what Community R4C is about. We are building a new model which will make the existing model, the incinerator, obsolete. Oh, what happened there? So that's the why. What are we about? Very quickly, Community R4C, we're a community benefit society. That means we're owned by members, but we're also required by law, because we're a community benefit society, registered by the FCA, to deliver benefits to the wider community, not just its own members. And what we exist for, are, we are a community-led initiative to provide environmental, social and economic benefits for Gloucestershire's by treating our waste as a valuable resource rather than burning or burying it. Our first objective, Trash to Treasure, is to support the building of an advanced, commercially sustainable recycling plant, which can turn 90% of the county's waste into valuable materials for sale and reuse. So we're not... Thank you. I put my hand up, but it's not me. This is by definition a community group where everybody is invited to be part of it. It is ambitious. It is brave. What we're not doing is investing directly in alternative facilities. So we're not building infrastructure. That takes tens of millions of pounds. We're building the community support network that encourages the right things to be built in the right way and waste to not be treated as waste, but to be treated as resource. Sustainability is built on 3 legs: environmental, social, and economic. Sustainable businesses require all those 3 legs to be in balance. In the existing model, in the traditional model, the economic leg gets nearly all the attention. So big businesses drive what they want. You know, they exist to make money, so they drive the economic leg. By being community-led and focusing on that social community leg, of course, communities are very concerned about their local and the world environment, so that leg gets attention. The economic leg not just gets attention in terms of the businesses. Sure, businesses need to make money, that's how they operate, but also is concerned about the people that pay into those businesses, the taxes we pay, and make sure that we are efficient about that. So we get those 3 legs into balance. So, Community R4C defines, and our commercial partners down at the bottom deliver. So community defines, partner delivered, commercial partners delivered. Now these things at the bottom here, they're businesses that might be profitable businesses, they might be educational initiatives, they may be charitable initiatives. But there are businesses down here that are making money from this sustainable circular economy we have. And one of the nice things about this model is that we can ask those people to subscribe into furthering this model. And indeed, one of the obligations of the recycling plant is to provide an ongoing community chest that helps us further develop this model and further encourage reduction, reuse initiatives, better design of products, etc. Now, this is a model for a circular economy in Gloucestershire, or anywhere. I want to take the word waste out of the slide. Okay, you know, what we want, people think this is very strange, what we want is that there's far less of this stuff here. Okay, so we are working to reduce the amount that sits in a black bin bag. It's fundamental. I also want to emphasize that this is an evolving, a learning, and a flexible model. It's vitally important not to build infrastructure that's inflexible, thank you, Jonathan, that as new technologies, new processes come along, things get better, and we can deliver a sustainable world. So, broadly speaking, let's walk this through very quickly. Waste is collected. It's collected in 2 forms: recyclates. That apparently also includes food waste that goes to composting or anaerobic digestion. The rest, that's about 50% in Gloucestershire, the rest goes into black bin bags. I'm sure you're all aware that in black bin bags is nearly all recyclable material. If you open up a black bin bag, it's full of plastics, paper, card, metals, electronics. People throw away their electronics. So that's what's in that black bin bag. Absolutely the last thing we should be doing is throwing that into an incinerator. It is a ridiculous concept. What you need to do, and legislation will make this a requirement because we need to move up the waste hierarchy, you can't lock yourself down at the bottom, is you need to extract those recyclable materials. So ideally, you would have a big automatic machine that from that black bin bag, either because of bad behavior, bad sorting, or whatever, we've ended up with a black bin bag of recyclable material. Put it in a big machine, that's what this R4C recycling plant is, and you end up with a lot more recyclates. About half as much again is recycled immediately then. The balance, that bit which you cannot economically recover, we turned it into a biomass fuel. I just want to emphasize that with this fuel, we've done two things. We removed two things that it's really important to remove. The first is we've taken out the recyclable material, notably the plastics. Okay, you don't want to be burning plastics. We've taken that out. The second thing, that's been washed and cleaned, and it's also had chlorine removed from it, which means that when you burn it, it doesn't produce dioxins. So this is a biomass fuel. I know there are mixed views as to whether or not burning biomass is sustainable or not. Certainly burning biomass that you've grown in place of food crops or trees or whatever is, you have to be sure that you're not displacing more important things. But once some trees have been made into paper, the paper's been made into card, the card has been maybe made into pizza cartons, and now is really difficult to recover into something useful, at that point it's a sustainable biomass fuel. These resources are low cost. Effectively, we're making them for nothing. We were paid for the resource. I mean, that's an incredible business model, isn't it? We get paid to receive resources which we process and turn into something that's valuable and we could sell at the other end. It is, and it is a fantastic business model. So these effectively cost us nothing to make. We can supply those to local business, local industry, at a very low and competitive price. So they're high quality. This is a particularly good machine, the process we're using here. So they're refined, they're cleaned, and they can supply local industry at a lower cost than what they're currently using, more locally as well. So that supports our local industry. It means that they become more competitive, they can employ more. Our local dairy factory, we have a big plant at Stonehouse, 8 kilometres from Javelin Park. You're probably all aware you cannot heat 8 kilometres, but you can ship a piece of biomass fuel 8 kilometres. So Dairy Crest currently burns gas. How much better it would be if they were burning a locally produced sustainable fuel. Good for the environment, good for their economy as well. Then at the bottom, those resources go into households, commercial businesses, and as I say, part of what Community R4C is about encouraging better design, better levels of packaging, better use, educational initiatives that reduce and reuse. The ultimate success for Community R4C would be that we make our own plant obsolete, because there is no more waste going there. It's not going to happen tomorrow, though. Briefly, what is the plant? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to emphasize. So it's basically it's a big industrial unit, big shed, 15 meters high, much smaller than an incinerator, but it's a standard industrial unit, which means that people will build it for us and they will lease that building to us. On a leased building basis, it will cost us £15 million to equip it to process all of the residual waste from Gloucestershire households. So that's about a tenth, probably less than a tenth, of what the incinerator costs. It's also a very efficient process, very low capital costs or relatively low capital costs. The consequence is that we can be very competitive on the gate fee. This is the bit that is the income to any waste treatment plant. You get paid to receive resource because it's called waste. The incinerator will charge upwards of £100. There are others that are more expensive still than that. We can charge just £50 a tonne, and I can tell you that there's plenty of people that would happily contract with us. There's people in this room today that would happily contract with us to send their waste to us at £50 a tonne because it's cheaper than alternatives. We've also said, because we're a community-based initiative, that we would support any local community, whether it's a district council, a community group, or even the county council. It's actually not as silly as it sounds, because it is that sensible. We would only charge local community suppliers £20 a tonne, which incidentally is less than the recycling credit they would get for sending their waste to us. That input is plenty for the plant to be profitable, and the plant to be profitable enough to repay the funding that we require, the 15 million at the bottom. So now we have a model. We can build this. without any public money, without a county council contract. So that's what we're going to do. Brilliant. I'm not going to talk about the process. You'll be glad to know. It is Friday afternoon. But let me just put it into context. So we have a big machine here. It's a number of stages, processes here. Sorts, cleans, refines, washes. It's a particularly good type of mechanical biological treatment, MBT. It's called advanced MBHT, mechanical biological heat treatment. And it does it in a particularly good way. That said, all of these processes should improve over time. Better optical sorting, better refining, better cleaning. So this is a collection of machines that should, over time, evolve and get better, or perhaps even making themselves obsolete. It's black bin, bag in, product out. At the bottom here, we have a bunch of recyclates, resources, and material product out. It's a great, should get better, that process, but it is already a great process. Let me share with you the views of a leading independent consultant that looked at the process. They looked at it in terms of its environmental impact, and this is what they said. They used a standard industry framework, which is called RATE. You may have come across it. What they said is the MBHT technology outperforms all other waste management technologies currently available at commercial scale in the UK. Okay, they were looking specifically, that's all, they compared it to incinerators. In fact, the incinerator they compared it to had combined heat and power, also to various types of MBT and MBT-AD. So different types of waste treatment processes. I've got, because I'm keeping to my 25 minutes, or possibly even less if I can, I've got numerous slides that can talk about the actual performance of this process. But let me just, and I'm going to just point out this one. So this, of the energy produced in the incinerator, yes, we only get 22% of it out usefully. The key thing for me is that most of that, 2/3 of it, came from burning plastics. Okay? At the public inquiry, I can tell you that everybody, including the inspector, was misled about that ratio. It was criminal. I stood up and presented scientific data which showed that it was 2/3, and yet they let the inspector believe it was renewable energy. Clearly, burning plastic is not renewable. Now, our plant takes out all of that plastic, so our disk of energy is much smaller. Okay, we're only basically burning dried foodstuffs and paper and card that has otherwise gone through a waste cycle. We get 90%. You can, because that fuel can be burnt where you need it, take it to an industrial plant, you get heat directly where you need it. You get a very high proportion of output. And of the output, 90% of the output comes from biogenic, that means recently growing sources. So that's sustainable. So if you could do this, if I could wave a magic wand, sadly I can't, what difference would it make within Gloucestershire? So we're going to build our plant. The incinerator may or may not go ahead. Let's hope it's not. We don't carry on with that madness. But if you how would our plant compare if you cancelled the incinerator, if you could do that, such a thing, and sent all of your waste to our plant instead? Well, first of all, the carbon footprint saving, greenhouse gases savings, is immense. 132,000 tonnes per annum of CO2 equivalent reduction in Gloucestershire. That's every year. That's equivalent to 140, actually, somebody told me 150,000 return transatlantic flights. It's probably one of the most significant things we could do in terms of our own greenhouse footprint within Gloucestershire, and it's a project that's happening right now. If you could, and this one is more difficult, our cheaper gate fees, or the cheaper gate fees of this plant, would save you £10 million a year, which is 200 teachers. That's every year. And this is for a county council that is very strapped for resources. 90,000 tonnes of material, metals, water, glass, plastics, electronics is recycled. The plastic proportion of that alone is equivalent to 1 million recycled fleeces. And we produce 90,000 tonnes of biomass fuel, equivalent to wood pellets. that can be used in place of gas at places like Dairy Crest, enough to apply it for, well, Muller, as it now is, enough to fuel 2 Mullers. Plants. In summary, so we believe the current model is broken. We've built a new model. We're in the process of building a new model which makes the current model obsolete. Our new model is community-led and commercially delivered and is evolving and learning as any sustainable model should be. That's the what. How? How are we doing? Well, the community part of this. So the community is a Community R4C. Has done fantastically well. In a few months, we established last year. If you've not been to our website, please go, communityr4c.com. There's a great video on there narrated by Kevin MacLeod which sort of explains what we're up to. We've incorporated, registered with the FCA, which means that I'm allowed to raise funding from all of you guys directly. I invite you to buy shares in my company. That's a very unusual thing, actually. Having been a venture capitalist, I know how difficult it is to get to a point that you can invite people to invest directly in your business. We have that. And we've got support from a number of people, and we're building that community engagement. And just a little pre-warning, I am going to do a shameless plug at the end to invite you all to become members of this and be part of it. In terms of the plant, how are we doing on the plant? Well, the planning phase, the bottom left, so it's planned, it's designed, it's laid out, it's costed. We've gone out, the business plan exists, we've gone out and we're in the partnering phase. So we're putting together a set of partners that will allow us to build this. Now those are partners that will supply waste, so there's waste supply partners, partners with land, they may be the same people. We have letters of interest from 2 waste suppliers, major waste suppliers, sufficient to fill up the plant by themselves. We have 2 developers who will provide the land and build the shed into which we will put our plant. And we're in conversation with investors and off-takers. So I mentioned Muller, but there are other major potential energy off-takers, and we're in discussion with them. So we're in that phase right now of putting together those partnerships. Once that's happened, we have a 18-month build phase after the 6-month contracting phase. So that's 2 years, add 2 years to now, means we're operational end of 2018. So we're building a new model that's going to be operational from the end of 2018, and that new model is going to make the existing model, which is not even going to be operational until 2019, obsolete. I do believe the incinerator will be obsolete before it even turns up. Thank you all. So, but I did promise a shameless plug at the end. And it is, first of all, a personal invitation from me to everybody here. So whether you're industry, council, suppliers, off-takers, consultants, we'd really like to build that community, both because, yeah, sure, we're doing something we think is very important in Gloucestershire, but we do feel that this is an interesting example, an exemplar, which we hope makes for better things in other places as well. So please, you're all invited, and let me invite Jeremy Irons to do a better pitch than me.
This project demonstrates clearly that where the system fails, the people can step up and do better. We all need to be responsible for our waste. This community is doing so, and by doing so, setting a much-needed precedent. I'm very proud and happy to be investing in a small way in it, and I urge you to join me.
Thank you, everybody.